Welcome to episode number 2. This is Jared. I'm your host of the Attitude Series podcast. And, this month we've got a pretty exciting guest on here. I've known him for well and truly over a decade. Yeah, it's been over a decade. And we'll probably get into more about that a little bit later on. Not in Australia, came over here at age 3 from Scotland. So he's got a Scottish background. We might hear a little bit about that as well. Pretty dynamic individual. He's written a couple books. He's working on his third. He's a personal trainer. He's a group trainer. He's spent 21 years in the military. He's also received an Order of Australian Medal, and just one dynamic guy. But he's had a very rich life, and continues to live that type of life. And we're very excited to have him here as our second episode. So please welcome Tom.
Thanks
Tom
very much.
Law.
Thanks, JD. I'm pleased to be here.
Thanks for being here, buddy. Thanks for being here.
No problems at all.
So, Tom, tell me, how are you doing today?
Good. I started early this morning. I generally get up about 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And
4?
4 a.m., yeah. I wake up at 4. I'm just across the road from the beach. I'm not sure if you know where I live, but I'm right on Sutton's Beach. So I get up about 4. I have a PT session at 5 a.m., a shared PT, so it's not just one-on-one.
Yeah.
Shared PT, that finishes at 6. I had an hour. I had a gentleman come and visit me to talk to me about body scans and some other business that he's keen on doing. And then at 7, I have a one-on-one PT. So I finished that. I went home, I had an acai bowl, and I jumped in the car and I came here.
What was that again? A what?
Acai bowl.
acai bowl.
An acai, A-C-A-I. It's a fruit bowl.
Oh,
fruit
gotcha.
Bowl with
okay. There you go.
So maybe I haven't said it right, but I had a fruit bowl and then I came here. So it's a fair hike here. But I'm pleased to be here. It's nice to see you.
Awesome. Great to see you too. Well, welcome. I want to talk a little bit about first, when I said Tom's from Scotland, came over here at age 3, just to get a little bit of background of where you came from, where you've been, and how you got up to this point right now, even growing up in Western Australia. Can you share a little bit about that story?
Sure. Well, I was born in Glasgow in Scotland. My sister and I came here with our parents in 1958. We came on the £10 immigrant, so it cost £10 to get out here. And basically the reason we came here is because my father and my mother wanted a better life. Right. A better life, more opportunities. The land of opportunity was Australia. And we settled in Geraldton in Western Australia, and I did all my schooling in Geraldton in Western Australia. And we had, as everyone has, we have a story. My upbringing was fairly harsh. There was 3 children in the family. One was an Aussie, so one was born over here. I had a fairly harsh upbringing, very disruptive lifestyle. And my father was an abusive type of character, and I tended to wear most of that. But my poor old mum died at 43 years of age, and mum was riddled with cancer and a few other things and had a terrible old life. But I joined the army. After that, I joined the army. I got married, I joined the army, and then I really never looked back. My life in the army was something that really suited me. I had lived a very disciplined life, so the discipline in the army wasn't an issue for me, and it was structured, and it also gave me the opportunity to do as best as I possibly could. In the army, even today, I think, it's not so much how intelligent you are, it's more about attitude, and that would impress you. So even the dullest person can do quite well in the military, provided they have the right attitude. And I wouldn't say I was the dullest, but I certainly wasn't the smartest. So the military suited me.
Hey, well, thanks for sharing that. And 21 years, that's not simple, because some people, obviously, you get a chance to keep staying in the military, but why 21 years? How did you figure that one out?
When I joined the military, it's a different story now. You could join for 3 or 6 years.
Yep.
And by the time I had joined the army, I was actually an electrician. I had been through an apprenticeship in Geraldton in Western Australia. And the real reason I joined was to continue on that electrical apprenticeship in the military, which was extra money for me. But the military and the army in their own particular way convinced me to join and jump across, but I never jumped across. I just got into the military and loved the lifestyle, loved the camaraderie, the sort of thing that impresses you as well. There's a lot of testosterone around, there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of activities you can do, and you can better yourself and gain confidence through the activities in the military. Not for everyone, but it really suited me.
How do you think that shaped where you're at today?
I think a lot of people will say that the army shaped them. I think I was more or less suited for the army. Yeah. So my upbringing and my lifestyle and the fairly harsh environment that I lived in suited me. to join the military, and it wasn't that much of a drastic change. As an example, because of the tendency to have a softer lifestyle these days, I think it's harder for young men and women when they go into the military because of the discipline. Whereas the standards that were set for me in my family life and the military were much closer together. So it wasn't as drastic a change for me.
You're right. And we can touch upon that too. Talking about softer lifestyles, because things are softer. Every generation is getting softer, and probably because of technology and mom and dad and all the different things. But yeah, I can see where you got that correlation between your childhood, growing up, and moving into the military, and it just seemed like a seamless transition.
And a family history, as indeed you have. I had a family history, so I was influenced by my aunties and uncles and my father.
Yeah.
And so for me, it wasn't a natural thing to do, but it was right at the time, and I decided to stay on.
Excellent. So, as a kid growing up, who were some of the, and maybe it didn't happen until you got into the military, but who would you believe were probably some of the strong influences that you had?
Well, my mother was a McGregor. My mum and dad both being Scots. My mother was a McGregor, and she wanted me to be a boxer. My father wanted me to be a footballer. Now, when I say football, I'm talking soccer, which has become very popular in Australia now. But in those days, it wasn't. It was mainly played by immigrants. And wogs, as we used to call them. So all the Italians and the Greeks.
Yeah.
But my mother had influence was on boxing, so I took up boxing. And actually, my uncle was an Englishman. He was a Cockney, and he used to train me. So I can recall him driving his old car around the place, and me running and doing a lot of track work as a young man. And eventually, I got to the Golden Gloves in 1967 in Perth, in Western Australia. But the passion for me was really in football, and I was pulled between the two. I liked the boxing training, and still to this day, but I enjoyed the football as well.
So the beep test, you've done that a few times?
I've done a few beep tests. Yes.
What was your best beep test?
13.
13.
13, and you may recall, when I say 13, 12, 8, 12, 9, so I'm stretching it a little bit there, but I was at Spectrum Gymnasium at Launton at the time, and we used to do the beep test fairly regular.
Yeah, I sit there, and the first thing I equate to soccer or football is the beep test. And I think about, we hear stuff like, I don't know, David Beckham getting up to 17 or 18. Somebody's got some crazy, ridiculous score. But I find that interesting because that was one of the things I got a kick out of doing, because I could run, but I didn't run as well as some of the other guys there.
What was your best beep test?
Maybe 11.5, I thought.
I'd be better now.
You think?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're a lot better now.
That was there was a guy, Dave Winnett.
Yes.
Yeah. So we were always chasing Dave, right?
Well, Dave could do his 2Ks in 7:58, 7:59, so it's pretty fast.
Yeah. And a Cameron. There's a guy named Cameron.
Cameron would do the same. Cameron's around still. Cameron's still around. I hear from Cameron from time to time. He's still around, but he was very fit too.
There you go. Yeah, awesome. So boxer, soccer, I was sitting there thinking about so those early days at Spectrum Gym, which just you had an environment. I guess when I first met you, when we think about over a decade ago, when I first met you, I came to you at a point in my life where I needed somebody to kick my ass, and that was only because I was overweight, doing all the wrong things, and wasn't personally looking after myself. So I was attracted to you because of that hardcore direction to say, hey, listen, I need you here 2 days, 3 days, 4 days a week. This is what you're going to do in that group environment. Have you found that is probably some of the most beneficial environment for newcomers when they come on board, to be in that group scenario, somebody controlling the whole show?
Yeah, I do. It's interesting that you say that, because there is a core group of people that enjoy that and like that.
Yeah.
And I was speaking to you before we came on air about how I'm interested in people getting out and doing exercise themselves and being more active. And some people need to be pushed. And some people will push themselves, and I know I need to be pushed. I can go out and do a run, and often I'll say, I'm going for a 10K run, I end up doing 5. and the good voice and the bad voice on the shoulder tell you what to do, and eventually you succumb to one of them. But people respond. And the thing about being controlled, whether it be in a boot camp or any sort of environment, is that you often get more out of the people than they would themselves, simply because you can push them that little bit further. And there is an art to it. There's definitely an art to it, because of course you can go overboard and you can push people too far. So from my perspective, the boot camp issue is very good because whilst it is a group environment and a group activity, you have to look after the individuals as well. So you have to have an individual focus on what people can and can't do.
Yeah, totally. I get that. And when I think about this too, I also was reflecting on, you have done, it almost feels like you were starting this before Spartan races, before Tough Mudders, before any of that. You taking your military training and then transferring it into the civilian social network side of things and being able to train people. And this is all before, like, your commando, the boot camp. I mean, even showing up at Spectrum Gym, I don't know how much money they spent, but obviously putting cargo nets and all that. I loved that. And you were doing that before everybody else was kicking into these boot camp sessions.
That's true. That is true. And it wasn't that we saw ourselves as pioneers. It was just simply a transition from the military. And the CEO of the gym at the time and of Spectrum thought that would be the best way to utilise me. I was managing the gym, but I wasn't going to be a gym instructor and work in the gym. And often we would be running around the gym and you would see the people who were gym attenders looking at us, and quite often a lot of our recruiting was from gym members who would come out and see us. But you're right, it was a transition, and it was really transferring a lot of that knowledge from the military and making it acceptable to civilians. So obviously you could go overboard, and we weren't doing that, whereas now there's certainly a lot of very, very tough mud runs, tough mudders and the likes around the place, and they take the extreme. You do the extreme stuff yourself, the trail running and the extreme stuff yourself. But in that day, it was not quite as severe, but it was a transitional thing, if you like, from the military training. And a lot of people were attracted because of the ex-military. And there's a lot of people that aren't ex-military that run them and do very, very well as well, of course. But the experience from the military held me in good stead, for sure.
Yeah, and rightfully so, because it hooked me. It hooked me for that time period. And I can remember, as you went through and you graduated people, and you shut down a season, and that was a launching platform for a lot of people to do other things. I saw people that wanted to. We met you introduced us to a super dynamic guy, which was a guy named Mal, who had lost a whole bunch of weight. He was a 3-time heart attack victim. But then he became a marathon runner.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Of course. Of course. He was a lovely man, and he had a magnificent story. He had a terrific story. Well, you're right, but I mean, look at yourself, your transition, which may not have started there. You had obviously the nucleus of your fitness, and you were a fit man early on at some stage. But as you say, you got caught up in business. Yeah. There was a lot of pressures on you, and your family business. Your dad was there, your family was there, and then of course you needed to get fitter, and you used us. We were lucky because you provided a lot for our group as well, because there was a lot of that.
There was a whole lot of stuff going back and forth.
There was a lot of that American enthusiasm and a lot of the old Marine stuff coming through from your dad, which was beneficial for our group as well. Yeah. And that's the sort of, we've mentioned a couple of people already, but those sorts of people really add. And once you get into a group environment, these group characters and dynamics come out, and they add to the overall mix. It's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, I do love that. I love cheering. I love clapping. And you know what? Sometimes the kids in the family, they're like, if you show up at an event to watch me on stage, Jared, I don't want you to say anything because you'll be the loudest in the audience.
Well, it's good, and the reason it's good is because it's genuine.
Yeah.
So it's genuine. It's not a manufactured thing, and a lot of people can tell the difference from that. And I do recall a story where I had to ask you to tone it down a little bit, simply because at 5:30 in the morning running around with Marine chants wasn't very impressive for some of the locals.
Oh, that's too funny. Well, what we should get into, because this is really your forte, the whole physical fitness, health, well-being, and you've been doing it for so many years. You've got a lot of information, but one of the key things, just talking about society today and where it's heading with health and what you're seeing today yourself out there.
Well, it's really interesting. I could go on for a long, long time about this because I am passionate about it. And I guess if we have to go back a little bit in time, maybe to your father's era, perhaps to your grandfather, when people didn't necessarily go to gyms. My father never went to a gymnasium in his life. My grandfather certainly wouldn't have. And I think the explosion of gyms in this day and age, the current day and age, is simply because we've forgotten the art of incidental exercise. For example, and I often wonder whether it's only me that sees the irony in this, you could often see people go to the airport and they pull out a handle and they pull their luggage. No one carries luggage anymore. They get to an elevator or the stairs and they go up the elevator. And you will see people in some of the largest airports in the world and they go on these travelators, which can go for 300-400 metres. At the end of the travelator, there's a massage chair. So they use the massage chair to massage their legs because they haven't been walking. And I just look at them and I think, if you simply walked, used the stairs, exercised as you're supposed to do, you wouldn't need to use the massage chair at the end of the travelator. And I just see that as, I just find that extremely funny.
It is funny, Tom, because I heard you also talk about it somewhere where you're like, people look at you funny when you go to a building that's got stairwells and you're looking for the stairwell instead of the elevator.
Yes.
Yeah.
And an interesting story, we were in Dubai and we were in a hotel in Dubai 7 stories up. And we would always look for the stairs. And of course, because it's predominantly a tourist place, everybody uses the elevators. And I asked the young man at reception if I could use the stairs, which they just happen to use for staff training and storage and so on and so forth. So they're not all that well used. And my wife was with me, and Margaret was carrying a couple of pounds at the time. And he said, "Do you want to use the stairs because your wife's fat?"
How did that go down?
Well, Margaret laughed. He didn't say it to offend. He was just very direct. And I guess there's something lost in translation there. But the fact of the matter is we were using the stairs because we wanted to maintain fitness whilst on holidays, enjoying ourselves, but still understanding the need to exercise. And so back to your original question, I fear for society these days because we seem to be getting rid of all the means that we can possibly exercise throughout the day and then compensate by going to the gym for an hour of an evening. And we're told by some of the scientists that's not enough. That is not enough. You cannot sit down for 8 hours a day on your backside, let your body slow down to the extent that it's clogging up, simply to go to the gym for an hour 4 times a week. It's not enough. You need to move. And so I'm lucky that that suits my personality where I can't stay too long in one spot and have to move anyway. But I advocate people getting more into incidental exercise. And you do not necessarily then, therefore, have to program exercise. It's something you get naturally or incidentally through the day.
It's a habit, right?
Yes.
And it's about forming those habits. And all I can say is that I feel grateful that I got some habits, and I'm not going to go into my later part of my life going, oh, geez, I'm ballooning up, I'm eating the wrong shit, and,
Yes.
I've got these I know why I would have problems. I got problems because I'm carrying too much weight. I got problems because I'm not eating the right food. I got problems, So.
And you accept that. There's a lot of people that don't. It's society. It's the fast food people to blame. It's the soft drink people to blame. It's everything else to blame.
It's the medication.
I'm on. It's hereditary. It's hereditary.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like that. And
quite often... He's big boned, right?
Yes.
He's a big boned kid.
We succumb to these things, don't we? It's excuses. They're excuses. I mean, you have a man that has no legs and he can do the Kokoda track.
There is no reason, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So what are you doing yourself to influence your part of the world?
That's a good question. I try as much as I can. I could do more, I guess. But one of the things that I do is, obviously, I'm still running my business. I'm a sole operator. I run Tom's Law personal training and group training, but I run free programs. So, for example, every Sunday we do a walking program. So
you watch out. You're going to blow up this podcast, free programs. You're going to get people wanting to contact you and figure out how to get a hold of Tom.
Well, we do that. It's, if you like, it's an introductory thing to exercise. So people gather on a Sunday morning, 6 a.m., and off we go for a walk. So it's very social, and people can go at their own pace. So you want to walk with Billy Bob, and he goes fast, then off you go. You want to walk with Mary Lou, she's a little slower, then that's the way it is. It's not particularly structured, it's more social, but it gets people interested in exercise from other than exercise benefits. Of course, there's the social aspect, there's the psychological aspects, there's all sorts of things, but it gets them interested in exercise. And in some instances, it gets them reinterested. They have been interested in exercise at some stage and they've lost it. They've got out of the habit of exercising. So we do that. I put out a weekly newsletter And there's about 1,400 people get the newsletter. There's only about 300 or 400 active exercisers with me, but I put out a weekly newsletter to try and encourage people. On that newsletter, or in that newsletter, I highlight the exercise programs around the place that are free, the local government programs that are free, the exercise equipment that council are putting up around the place now, which are very, very good.
How great is that?
Yes.
Seriously, you can go just about anywhere and you can find these set up.
Yeah, look, excellent. And I know in various forms they are done all around the world, but I think we're very, very lucky here. I work with a couple of people at North Lakes, an area you know well, and they even have pneumatic machines. They are pneumatic machines, hydraulic, that you can adjust. These are park community equipments, and they've just put them out. They're fantastic. So the opportunity for people to exercise is greatly increased, and I'm trying to highlight that and get people to use them.
That is great. Yeah, the other day, my wife Nicole, she took Tom down, and they went walking the dog, and they went because we got some trails and area around here, and once again, they've just recently in the last couple of years they've just lined up a whole beautiful area where they've got these machines everywhere, and you start to see people out there and using them. And right now, this is the perfect time of the year, isn't it?
Well, if I've got time to tell you a little story, I'm working with a group of people, and on Thursday I'll do my last session. I've been doing it for 10 weeks. The council pay me to run these programs, and there's about 8 or 9 people. And they come to this particular set of equipment, which is at Scarborough, which is across the road from Morgan's, a well-known seafood place.
Great punch.
Yeah. So we exercise them. We've been exercising for some time, and they're very enthusiastic. And I've showed them how to use the equipment and little tips and hints, for example, chin-ups and pull-ups. Not a lot of the elderly can do them, but I've shown them how you can do a preliminary one and eventually get yourself to the extent that you can do it, or part thereof. So we've got a good little group there. So I've suggested to them that on Thursday when I finish, that they continue on exercising. So they've got a email group on Facebook. They all talk to one another. They all will continue that exercise, and I'll visit them once a month to redo a program for them. And it's fantastic. So I've written to council. I've told council this is the case. Great outcome for council. And so in that small community, we've polarised 8 or 9 people and their families, and hopefully that can grow, and they build this little community around exercise.
You have no idea how much of an effect you've had on people, do you?
Sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. So there is times, from time to time, people do mention it, but I think generally you just go through what you're doing, and as we all do and see, and you know, you've affected people, you've affected me, you've affected a lot of people, but you don't always recognise that you do that.
Yeah, if you would have asked 10 years ago, hey, you know what, I reckon I might be sitting down with JD. I know you say JD, Jared, you're one of the very few guys on the planet that call me JD. So when I hear it, I know it's Tom. I don't, nobody else, right? JD, so one of the very few people, if you would have said 10 years from now, Jared, we're going to be doing a podcast, I'd be like, nah, I got other things going on, probably not doing it. But you just never know where things are going to lead you.
Yeah, but even so, whilst you probably speak about 10 or 15 years ago when you weren't at your fittest,
right?
You recognise the need to get fit. And whilst it's not specifically a fitness thing, it's certainly activity. I recall that you had in one of your offices a small 10-pin bowling lane.
Ah, yes. That's pretty funny now that you say that. Yes, we did have a 10-pin. We did stuff for salespeople. We had little funny competitions, and I had a 10-pin bowling thing set up. So when the salespeople came in, they would bowl for dollars, and they would be active.
But it was active. Yeah. It was involvement. And so I know that you were doing it predominantly from a business point of view, but people were being active and they were doing things.
That's right.
From my perspective, that's what we need to do more of, the incidental stuff. I'll give you an example of my wife, and she'll probably hear this and maybe get a bit annoyed, but women generally, if I can generalise, they'll go to the shopping centre and spend 5 minutes doing laps to find a car park closest to the entrance. Whereas I would say, there's one over there, yes, but it's too far away. So we've lost the habit of parking and walking. And that's incidental exercise. And that's what we've lost these days. All too often, labour-saving devices are killing us.
Yeah. And that's something that, look, if and all good points, because let's say from here on out, everybody that's listening to this, start parking 3 blocks away and walk, if that's the case. You need to get that done. The exercise that we're losing out on, especially from, I'll say from a personal standpoint, devices, Growing up as a kid, we were always I was on a bike. I was out in the trails. I was building a fort. I was terrorizing the neighborhood. I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
And importantly, your parents let you.
Yeah, they did. They let me come. They let me, all that stuff. We could probably go on a whole nother episode about the stuff that happened as a kid. Today, kids can get cooped up in their house, in their bedroom, on a device.
And if you take their iPad off them, then you're the worst parent in the world.
Hell
and I
breaks
understand
loose.
the pressures of that. I have grandchildren. I understand that. So to get them, but I don't think that you should give up on it. I think you just have to be a little bit more imaginative and use, for example, my grandson, who I'm going to see in Bahrain in a week or so, is seven years of age, nearly 8. And when we went last time, several years ago, I tried to get him into rock climbing to be a little bit more active. He didn't like it. He's a rock climbing champion now. And yesterday I spoke to him and he said, well, relatively speaking for his age, he said, Poppy, we need to go rock climbing when you get here. So in some way we have, or I have, or his parents have, or we have influenced him to want to be a little bit more active, which is great. You just have to be use a little bit more imagination these days, I imagine, because the pull from the electronic area is very, very strong.
Yeah. And now, is this the same little fella that I saw a picture of running with a rugby ball in like mid-stride, looking like, like he's going for the touchdown. He's going for the,
That's the same guy. And the ball is a very large-looking ball, isn't it? Certainly wasn't a cut-down ball.
Mate, that was a fantastic shot.
It was a good shot.
Yeah.
I'm glad you saw that. It was
I'm
a good
sure
shot.
at some stage, with permission of everybody else, we'll have to put that shot on there so people can see it.
That'd be fine, yeah.
Yeah, cool. But, in saying some of that stuff about fitness, incidental fitness, I was going to ask you what generally happens, and this is something that's happened to me over the years. I've been part of running clubs. I've been part of triathlon clubs, trail clubs. I've been, I've done a lot of things. And whenever I've come across people that say, "Oh man, I'd love to do what you're doing," but what I want to do first, because you guys seem like you're great at what you do, or you're at a certain level. I'm just going to take off for a couple weeks. I'm going to do some training on my own. I'm going to get fit, and then I'll come and join your club.
Yeah, we hear that a lot.
Yeah,
we hear that a lot. Now, the secret to that is, of course, I understand people doing that, and I've had one or two people, you may relate to this as well, that said, I don't want to join because I would be a little bit embarrassed at the moment because I really am better than I look at the moment and I'm fitter. I just don't want to be beaten by a female or be beaten by a younger bloke or be beaten by an older fella. And I understand that, and that's a competitive thing. Yeah. I understand that. But what we try and instill in everyone is that we all start somewhere. And a lady, for example, this morning was exercising with me, and one of the circuits that we did, one of the activities on the circuit was skipping. And 2 weeks ago, she couldn't skip, just could not skip. Well, we persevered as long as I possibly could, given the exercise environment. I couldn't concentrate on her wholly and solely. But she went away for a week, and I gave her a skipping rope and a medicine ball. I said, now go on holidays, enjoy yourself, but come back having learned to skip. And she did. She skipped this morning. And I spoke to her, and one of the concerns she had was that she was coming last, and I always look unfit. This particular lady has been an athlete, so it won't take her long to get back into it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I said to her, we all start somewhere. You've got to get rid of that. You have to really and truly get rid of that because the environment and the teamwork in that group setting will pull you along. And it's much better to get into if I want to play golf, I want to play with Jack Nicklaus because he will improve my game. I don't want to play with Billy Bob, who can't play. I want to play with someone that knows what they're doing because I'll get dragged along and learn from them. And that's what you have to try and instill in these people. Come now and learn from us. We've all started there.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of it too is just being self-conscious. People need to drop the ego. They just need to get involved with it. A few months back, I was in the States, and one of the first things I wanted to do, because I've never been great at a gym, I've never been great at weights, I've never been great at wanting to go to a gym, so I joined a CrossFit. And I joined it knowing that I have no gymnastics background. I have no functional type movement background with the weights or what they do in CrossFit. And I was getting smashed up every single time I walk in there. I'd be coming dead last in their Metcons and their AMRAPs and I would have the lowest amount of weights. The women were out throwing weights around me. The only thing I could do was I could outrun people.
Yes.
And but I wasn't there to learn how to run. I was there to learn how to do something new. At 46 years of age, and that's what people need to do. They just need to be willing to accept it.
And that's great. And I think that you should do that. I think that you need to get different experiences and doing different things with different exercise groups And I've tried as much as I can to do that myself so that you can speak with some authority about it.
Yep.
But I think that's terrific. That's really beneficial to you, and you can speak now with a degree of authority about CrossFit. And they all have their benefits. They all have their drawbacks. They all have their issues. And it's nice to work in a group knowing that we all operate the same. We all have problems. We all get injured. We all overdo it.
It's interesting, too, because all these CrossFit gyms, they all have a WOD, a workout of the day.
Yes.
And one of the things I noticed is that they show the workout the day before, and sometimes they don't show it until late at night, because the minute somebody sees it, if they don't like it or they don't want to do it, they don't show up. And so you got a whole different clientele. I'm actually personally looking for if it says running, I said, it's no big deal. But I'm looking for every day it looks like a workout I can't do anyway. So I've got to force myself to say, Jared, just show up, go get your ass kicked, and do it. And that's just a mindset, too.
It is a mindset.
You work with people on that stuff.
Yes, well, for years, and I'm starting to do a little bit of it now because we change how we operate and adapt to the crowd and the group that you're working with. But for years, I wouldn't tell anyone what we were doing. There was two reasons for that, really. The first was you didn't want to discourage them from turning up.
Yep.
Because often when they turn up, they go, what are we doing? 2K run, time trial. Oh, no. Had you told them the night before, consciously or subconsciously, some just don't turn up. Some develop illnesses. Some just won't turn up because it's happening. Some people would turn up, and once you told them the program, would be physically sick. And I have seen that. They'd be physically sick, but they were there. And so they would seldom go home. In fact, never seen anyone go home. Now, I still use the same principle, but occasionally I will tell them and warn them for 3 or 4 weeks ahead. For example, on Saturday, we have our last session of the year, and we do a thing called 500, where there's 5 disciplines. Each one you can accumulate 100 points for. And so far in my group, we've only got one person that's got the 500.
Wow.
If you don't reach those standards, you drop points. So I've given them some warning. 3 weeks ago, we did a little rehearsal, so they are prepared for it. So those that don't turn up, I'm accepting the hit that they won't turn up because of that. But the benefits to those that will turn up is enormous.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing. So, but looking into the future with your training and everything that you've got going on, is there? And we're going to talk about it here in a second because I'm interested to hear some about the book. You got this book that's come out, is how to succeed as a personal trainer. Some of the hot tips, and I know that there's all kinds of technology out there, but I'm really fascinated to hear your take on a lot of this information. What are you doing today a little differently for your groups, your personal training groups, and things that you feel are making a real impact on individuals?
That's a very good question because I have changed. Obviously, you get older, and your views change slightly. So when you were exercising with me, we always exercise 100 miles an hour. Yeah. I now have a lady who's 80, who's been exercising with me for some time, and in fact, her daughter and her granddaughter and her grandchild have exercised with me.
Wow.
In fact, I ran into a lady this morning who served me coffee, who said, and I said, you look familiar. She said, well, I should do because you trained me as one of the little kids in the Kids Tough program at Spectrum. So the lady this morning, and she's now in her 20s. So you do change the way that you train. And I'm jumping off subject here, but one of the things that I notice with personal trainers is that often they only have one speed. And it doesn't matter what age you are, if we refer back to your previous question, it doesn't matter your capability, they all get smashed.
Yeah.
And that's every session. And whilst there is a place for that occasionally, it's not every session. And you can quickly discourage people. And not only that, you can harm them, you can do damage, but discouraging people is not good for your business.
No.
So you have to be a little bit more circumspect, have to be a little bit more thoughtful about the exercise. And one of the things that I would say, which I believe is beneficial if you exercise with me, is I will exercise you to your capacity based on my understanding of what you're capable of. So if you're 80 years of age, I know what you can do. If you're 46 years of age and a trail runner and a very fit man, I know that I need to give you more. And often people in our group and they'll say to me, oh, you're picking on him. You seem to be picking on him. No, I'm giving them additional training because they need it. Because they would not come back to me if I kept them on the same program that I was going to do with a 60 or 70-year-old. So
it's amazing too. I was just sitting here thinking about the lip service that you get back from people in your boot camp training style.
Yes.
Is that back and forth, the argy-bargy that can happen sometimes.
Yes. And if you give it, you have to be able to take a bit of it, and I do. But that would be the major change, is that I've adapted to some extent because I'm older, and because a lot of my clientele are older. We still cater for the youngsters, but they've grown with me. So I'm a little bit more. I'm a little bit more circumspect. I think a little bit more about the activities that they can and they can't do, and I work in closely, as most PTs do, with those in the allied health and their physios, their doctors, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, as a society right now, where do you think some of the greatest threats? What are you seeing? Some of the greatest threats that we have in terms of what's happening with the health side of things? I
did mention earlier, but I think that we've lost a lot. We have really and truly lost a lot, because modern society and the inventions of the modern world are killing us. I mean, we don't have to get up now to turn the TV off.
Yeah.
We don't have to move. More and more, the labour-saving devices we have are making us more, are encouraging us to be less active. I was speaking to a gentleman the other day who works at the council, and he empties the bins. And I said to him, 15, 20, 25 years ago, your job would have been to run into the yards, pick up the bin, run to the truck, throw it on the back. In fact, don't you know that boxers and footballers look for jobs like that because it complemented their training? The milkman, the man that delivered the bread. But more and more now we see, and I don't think it's unfair to say, large people sitting behind machinery, operate machinery that previously people did. So
sedentary,
very sedentary. And that to me is something that is really, I see it on a daily basis, and to me it's just disappointing. It's really disappointing that people choose to do that on the basis of, I have so much to do in my day.
Different generations, right? It's insane. When I read somewhere about your childhood, and in terms of being in WA and the people riding around on bikes because maybe lack of vehicles, that was just what they did. I've got my father-in-law who's Dutch, and he's been riding bikes ever since he was a kid. He's actually the Australian Nationals Masters champion for 70 to 75.
Wow.
So 70 to 75, he is the Australian champion, and he came 13th in the world. A couple months ago, we went over to Italy to go watch him race.
Wow.
Which is where it was, in Varese, Italy. Anyway, super proud of that guy.
Road course or velodrome?
Yeah, it was a road. It was it was the Grand Fondo. So that was a phenomenal opportunity.
But cultural.
Yeah.
Cultural.
Yeah,
the
cultural. Yeah, I mean, and when he first came over, and this is a story I hear from Nicole, but when he first came over to Australia, him and his wife rode bikes, and they were in the western suburbs of Sydney. They rode bikes, but realized there's too many hills and too many of this, and we can't do this. It's not like being back in the Netherlands. And you said a baker or a bread delivery guy.
Yes.
His name is John, but my stepfather-in-law, he rides bikes, and he was, western suburbs of Sydney, and he's, rides all over the place. And but once again, different generation. These guys are just moving. They're active. They're in the 70s, but they still have a level of fitness which can smash out most young 20-year-olds.
And they wouldn't know what it was like to be unfit. And a lot of those people, JD, a lot of those people weren't doing it for exercise. It was transport.
Yeah.
It was simply to get from A to B. And we've lost a lot of that, and we continue to lose a lot of it, and we continue to encourage people not to exercise because of that. And that to me is just absolutely terrible. I mean, we are now going to have people live longer, apparently. Medical profession has gone ahead in leaps and bounds, but we're going to have 100-year-old fat people or people that are unhealthy because we will make them live longer. But it's the quality of life. And people say to me, what would happen to you if you were running one day and you dropped dead? I said, well, that's the way to go. Because I would much rather be healthy for as long as I possibly could than deteriorate for the next 20 or 30 years of my life.
You just gave the vision of, like one of my happiest thoughts that I have when I'm out running trails and I know I'm 5, 10, 15, 20 kilometers deep into the forest or a single track, and I've got nothing but Mother Nature around me. If I had a heart attack at that moment, I'd say to myself, I had a perfect life.
Yeah,
that's it. And because I don't want to spend 20, 30 years like going through surgeries and crap and medications. And,
no.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, we can't say all of it. No one can say all of it, but a lot of it is so preventable.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we've got a whole generation or a couple generations of these personal trainers that are
Yes.
coming through the pipeline
Yes.
and maybe becoming disillusioned.
Yeah.
But in terms of not having them become disillusioned, Tom Law has come to the rescue, and he's brought a book, How to Succeed as a Personal Trainer. And we're going to put some information about this up on the podcast as well. But I'd like to get into a little bit of information.
Sure.
Why did you put this out?
That's a good question too. But the real truth of the matter is, and this is going to sound, as I say in the book, like a Miss World answer, is that I am concerned that we are not training our young people and have not had the training that I've had. And I think that's a shame. And I'm not saying that I'm the world's best. It's like the fastest gun shooter. There's always someone better. There's always someone you can learn from. The minute you let go of ego, as you said earlier, we can all take in so much information. But what does concern me is that from a training point of view, as indeed many things in this world, it's a race to the bottom. How quickly can we train these people? The quality goes out the window and the brevity and the money comes in. I'll give you a course for $600, 6 weeks, you're qualified. And you see that right across the board. I don't think that's an unfair statement.
No.
So the quality of training may not be there. So consequently, this is a fairly quick way to get yourself a qualification. It's seen as a romantic occupation. There's people bringing books out like how you can make 6 figures by working 1 hour a day. And I really have yet to achieve that. But it's seen by a lot of young people as quite a romantic occupation. And people go, yes, I'll have a shot at that. I haven't got a great OP. I'm not entirely dull. I'll have a shot at that. I think I'll be good at that. I'm reasonably fit. I'm very sporty. And very quickly, in many instances, become disillusioned because of the industry. Gymnasiums have to make a living, and they have a system where you need to pay to work in a gymnasium. So consequently, you have to learn your trade very, very quickly. And by learning your trade very quickly, you then get some income. Some of that goes to the gym owner. Some of it you keep. But because people have that transitional period where they do not want to do anything without money, they need the instant fix. I need that money straight away. So consequently, you don't have people staying around long-term in gyms and building a rapport and a clientele. If they go out, they're up against crusty old PTs like myself. Someone sees a young PT down the beach and they go, and there's that old fellow over there. He must be in the industry 45 years. I'll go with him. Exacerbated by the situation that youngsters charging more.
Right.
So there's a number of factors that work against the young and the not so young PT coming into the industry. Seldom can you come in and work full-time straight away. There's just not the money there, no matter what people tell you.
Yeah, and you know, when we think about with social media today and young people coming in and doing this, with the lack of experience that they have, if they don't have the same 45 years experience, they don't have a military background, they don't have a consulting coaching, they don't have anything like that, but yet they want to do that, what is the best piece of advice you could give them if they really want to be passionate and kick out into this?
This is controversial because not many people will do it, but I would say give yourself 3 months, no pay. Attach yourself to somebody and offer your service to someone and learn from that person. Find out who's the best person in your area and say, I want to work for you. I'll do work experience, 3 months, no pay. Can I please learn? Get up at 4 in the morning, go to bed at midnight, but learn everything you can and get everything you possibly can from that person. In other words, forget the money initially and try and get some experience. Learn from someone else. Attach yourself to someone. Even if you do get a couple of dollars, that's fine, but be prepared to not earn immediately. One of the problems within society these days is that you grew up in an area where you had to learn to earn.
Yeah.
I grew up where you had to learn to earn. So my money as an apprentice, I recall my first wage was $12. 5 of that went to fixing or paying for my toolbox that the company supplied for quite some time. So the money wasn't good, but I could go with a tradesman because I wasn't getting paid a lot of money and I could learn from him. Yes, I learned how to sweep floors. Yes, I learned how to tidy up, how to wash my hands, how to be polite to people, how to use my manners, but I also learnt my trade. Youngsters these days want to hit the ground running. As you mentioned earlier, instant society, I want my $2,000 a week. It's just not possible. And consequently, because it doesn't work initially, because it takes them some time to build a client base, they get disillusioned and head off somewhere else and find some other easy employment.
And they don't understand the whole idea of bootstrapping their business.
They don't understand. You would understand because you've been in business. You understand that you need to give to get. Yeah. That it is not possible to start earning immediately. You have to pay your dues, as we say. Yeah. There has to be some means by which you learn and you gain experience. A young person said to me, I'm not getting money for value. And I said, what do you mean by that? They said, well, I value my experience and what I have. And I said, it doesn't matter how much you value it. It's how much the client values it.
That's right.
Because they're the people that pay you. So you might think you're worth $25 an hour, but they might think you're only worth 10. You're not going to get 25. You have to get to a stage in life where the value from your client's point of view is recognised.
Yeah, very true. And you know what? It's going to spit a lot of people out too. You know, they become disillusioned and spit them out because, you know, there's so many courses online that people take, or, you know, just to be able to get that quick qualification.
Yes.
But, you know, so the book itself, which is fantastic, all right, handling clients, and that all comes back to, once again, all different types of clients. And you said it earlier, just for the sake of it, just go through those different types of clients that you feel are out there in terms of people like me or somebody just trying to dive into fitness for the first time. What are some of these clients that you come across yourself?
Okay, so I have them in 3 categories. It's my categories and it's my opinion.
Hey, well, you are the expert, right? We got
So self-appointed. So there is people that like to go to gyms and will not move from the gymnasium. So they are comfortable, they're content, they're happy in the gym. Be they good exercisers or not, they love the gym. So that is their home. They would not go outside. They do not want to do boot camps. That brings me to the second person, the boot camper. Myself, I prefer, although I managed a gym for 5 or 6 years, I really am an outdoor type of person. I like to get out and climb and monkey bars and do all the ninja stuff. And you're much the same, I understand.
Yep.
The trail runs, the extreme activities. So there's the gym person, there's the boot camp, if you like, or the outdoors, and there's the person that's the reluctant exerciser that doesn't want to pay for anything. And they're the people that I try and work on to some extent, because the boot campers come to me naturally, the people in the gym won't come anyway, and the other people are reluctant exercisers or reluctant payers. So in my business, I have to convert them to get them to come to understand the value of paying, and sometimes you need to throw out some things, as I mentioned, like a freebie. Those people aren't impressed by price. A free session every now and then, give them a little bit so that they feel that they're getting great value for money. So that's the 3 categories that I see it. Now, each one of them has to be pushed. The person in the gym, because quite often you see people in the gym and all they seem to be doing is working on their mobile phone. The outdoor boot camper needs to be pushed as well to improve, and so too does the reluctant person that doesn't necessarily want to exercise or pay for exercise. So in the last few years, I've been working on those people. So there's a lot of people out there that would exercise if it was affordable.
Yep. And they need to. We need to have people out there exercising. I mean, that's what we're built, human beings, right? We're built for literally moving every day, you know, from quadpedals to bipedals to, I studied anthropology, so I'm sitting here thinking about how we moved along in this space-time continuum.
Yes.
And we will continue as well, so that's fantastic. Now, in terms of what I was going to do, where are we at with time right now? What do we hit up to? Yeah, we are just smashing it out here, Tom. What I would like to do before we wrap up is I want to be able to, for people that are listening to this, I want people to know how they can get a hold of you, how they can get in contact with you, whether it's through your website, whether it's LinkedIn, and also about the book. How do we get our hands on this book?
Right.
If you could share that as well.
Well, this is available from Amazon, Smashwords, Create Space. Yep. So that all the electronic versions, and you need to look up Tom's Law, How to Succeed as a Personal Trainer. So they're available. I can give you a copy as well. I've got copies at home. But generally speaking, people buy it electronically. It's around $25, whatever that equates to, wherever you are. So that book is a good book, particularly at Christmas time. Really, really good for young people that are just qualified, or indeed for older people. I've had quite a few people who are in the industry that said there's some gems in there. And some of it's military. Yep. For example, this would impress you. I use an acronym called RSVP in regards to how you speak: rhythm, speed, volume, and pitch. So if you use RSVP and you don't have the annoying high screeching voice, you give enough pause for people to understand what's going on. So it's part of communication as well.
That's great.
So an RSVP. So that's the sort of, there's little gems in there like that.
You picked that up in the signals, right?
I did pick that up in signals. So there's little gems like that. Also in regards to communication skills, and how you receive communication skills won't be the same as me. How you perceive that, and how you have to cater for that. Early in the day, I'd say if 70% got it, then that's fine. But you have to make sure, particularly for retention and a business point of view, that people understand and don't think they're dull because they haven't got what you've put across. It's my issue, communication, not theirs. So there's those sorts of things. It's a good book, and it's a matter of fact. It's a lot of people, one of the best compliments I have is people could read it and say, I can hear you speaking. So they actually hear me through the book, which is really good. So the other thing, people can contact me through Facebook, Tom's Law. So it's TOM''S Law. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I have a web page. And if they're distant, then I'm quite happy to give them some advice. But the other piece of advice I'd really give to people is to do some research. Spend 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour a day doing some research. And you can find programs locally. Gyms will give you a free trial.
Yes.
Councils have free programs. There is free equipment around your area. There's often a park. There is Park Run, which is free. There is so many opportunities in Australia for people to get exercise. The only excuse they can have, in my opinion, is they're lazy. Because if you don't have your health, you have nothing. So think about your health, spend some time thinking about it, and do a plan, have a plan, and make it part of your everyday routine, like brushing your teeth.
That's fantastic. I love it. You know, I know there's lots of information that people are going to get. We'll put all this stuff up on the podcast. We'll put the notes on how to get a hold of Tom, how to get this information and get this book as well. Tom Law, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming in here, and it's been fantastic to catch up with you.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate it too.
Thank you.